So as your business grows, you need to learn that your coaches, your mentors, the people that you have, they should be shifting with your business. Because the same person that coached you when you were new is probably not going to be the same person that should be coaching you down the road. Because your businesses, they don't change, but your successes change in those things. So anyway, so this was kind of the interesting thing about it, because my dad didn't want me to, he didn't want to quit. We were losing hundreds of thousands of dollars a month and trying to keep businesses open when the market started to crash. And what I realized after, he would always say 2 feet from gold. Don't want to quit, want to keep going. And so what it was, after I read the rest of the story, as Paul Harvey would say, years later, the rest of the story is this. Family went to California. They struck it rich in the gold rush. They were digging, they were doing all the right things, but some way they got off course. And so they were digging in the wrong direction. And when they got off course, rather than looking for advice, they gave up. This is what my dad was always pointing out. They just gave up. So they sold everything for pennies on the dollar. And the new guy that came in simply hired a geologist to retrack where the vein went. And my dad was right. They were 2 feet from gold. They just weren't seeking the right advice to keep them on track. So if you guys are newer in the business, it's important that you do have mentors or coaches or somebody that is, or showing up to these classes to help you stay on track. And then eventually you might get into the point of wanting to level up where you're paying for coaching, depending on what you want to do. That's one of the things that I specialize in, the investment stuff. But you want to think about things like, if I asked everybody, what are you doing right now to dig for gold in your business? Like, what are you prospecting? Are you cold calling? Are you door knocking? What's everybody doing as they get started? Anybody?
Open houses.
Okay.
Boom town.
Okay.
Shit leads. Open houses.
Okay.
My main thing.
So you're doing open houses, generate leads, like that you're digging through the gold that way, right? That's one of the tools or the shovels that you're using. But what happens is, in the market that we're in, and this is kind of what I wanted to explain about, where I came from, was we lost sight of the things that we did early on. And because we lost sight of the things that we were doing, and we started managing people and construction companies and things, it took us way off track in our business. Because now we were paying more attention to what was going on here, and a lot of wasted time with shiny objects. So this business right now reminds me of, our market right now reminds me a lot of, the boom last time, right? It was easy, for most people, as you're newer, it's a little bit harder. But once things start happening, we tend to lose sight on the things that we started, right? So that's a really, really important piece, is to stay focused on the things that you started doing until you get to the point of being able to hire somebody to do some of those things. So somebody give me an example of some of the stuff, like you said, open houses, right? But if you're producing leads out of that, you don't want to give that up. The same things that I try to teach my agents is, don't forget, as you pick up a client, the things that you had to do to get that client. Because once you get that client, you start working with them, you forget to do these things, right? It's kind of like working with Lizzie's Greatness Tracker. It's giving you all the things to do on a regular basis in order to keep your leads flowing. And so, have you guys seen the Greatness Tracker that Lizzie's put out? The Greatness Tracker is a great way. I had this conversation with my team the other day. It's a great way to track and keep in front of you. Some days it's hard to track on it because there's so many different, chicken scratches on it. But it's a great way to keep you focused on the things that you need to do in order to create the lead down the road. Because the stuff that you're doing now is 60 to 90 days out. And if you stop doing the things that you did 60 to 90 days before, you have to start over again, and you lose the momentum.
So I was here for your last class, and the thing that I left with was the keys in the jar.
Yep.
And so I've just been focusing on getting out of the house and building relationships.
Yeah.
And then following up with those relationships, and so that I feel like when they're ready, or they know someone that has a real estate need,
Yep.
they're gonna go, oh yeah. And so just in some days, you know, it might be late at night, and then I'm like, seriously, really, you let the whole day go by and really, you know, touch like 2 people? So
Right.
then I go into a mad rush, and then some days I wake up and I'm like, no, I'm just gonna get it done and out of the way. Or sometimes it just happens in the course of the day. But it's really such an internal struggle, I feel like. I mean, not that you have a lot of problems, but I mean, just it's becoming more forefront now. And then, so that was really helpful.
Oh,
and
good. Thank you.
You're going to be like, so I talked for an hour and a half, and
Nope.
she's leaving with keys.
But that's the important part, but it's not just a visual piece of it. You've also become aware,
yeah.
right? And being aware, and sometimes we have those days where we can't rely on motivation or inspiration. It's got to be consistency. And there's going to be days you don't feel like making those calls. There's going to be days you don't feel like writing those letters. There's going to be days you don't feel like posting stuff in your stories or on Facebook or whatever. But those are all the things that keep you relevant, right?
So the habit I got into was dropping my son off at lacrosse practice because he doesn't drive yet. It was 2 hours. I sat in the parking lot. My husband thought I was crazy. I sat in the parking lot in my car, listening to an Audible, you know, just on my phone with people, and it went fast. I mean, I was watching a beautiful sunset, you know, I was going down, it was very calming, and I thought, what would I have done before? Just drove back home.
Right.
And so you're in that 20 minutes each way,
Right.
there's 40 minutes gone. So I'm finding the time to just, what would I have done before? No, now I'm going to do something different. So.
Well, so we also want to stay focused, you know, and that's why I said the different coaches and mentors along your business, because eventually you're going to get good with the tools that you're using right now. And in the current market that we have, let's face it, there's a lot of shiny objects, there's a lot of gimmicks, there's a lot of products, there's a lot of things that we can try to implement. But there's certain things that you want to make the core focus of your business and be able to add some of that stuff to it over time, like the investment side, right? I didn't start off in the investment world, I started off in the real estate world serving people. And eventually my knowledge grew and I was able to bring people on to handle the regular stuff when it comes down to the listings. Are any of you guys working on teams in here? You are? Whose team are you on?
Mine.
Okay. That's right, we had that long conversation. That's
Yeah.
where you landed. Good.
Yeah.
The teams are important. You know, when you first start out, it's a good place to go. I know some people have this issue with splits and things like that, but the teams are a great place for mentorship and learning and going through that process. So, let's talk about shiny objects right now in the market. What's up, Russ? I'm sorry, it's so freaking hot. Is anybody else warm? Or is it just... No? Jeez. Okay, maybe for
I was worse when I was here.
You know, talking about what you just mentioned about the keys and the focus is our current tools that we're using to dig for gold, you know, is our prospecting, our open houses, phone calls, social media. How many of you guys are getting better with your social media as a tool?
Better defined very loosely. But I think the bright shiny object syndrome, as you want to say it, I think part of the problem with it is not just with agents. I think the consumer also has so many bright shiny objects that, because it used to be, you know, word of mouth, whatever, you know, everybody knew you were in, I mean, this was before I was in real estate, so I have no experience of it, but, you know, everybody knew you were a realtor, they'd come talk to you, whatever, you know, like, but now it's like, you know, Zillow, realtor, that, because there's just all these bright shiny objects out there.
Right.
And all the iBuyers and, you know, whatever, so.
Yeah, we definitely live in a different market, and you bring a good point up is that, you know, one of our jobs as we're going through to do this prospecting, right? And I don't call it prospecting in our office, we actually call it connection time. We want to connect with people and build relationships so that when the shiny object comes up, you're able to direct them in the right thing. Sometimes the iBuyer is the best choice for them. You know, depending on what kind of move they're making or whatnot, it's a possibility and it's an option. And our job is to guide them to and through the process, not to sell them something or, you know, push them into something. It's really about the guidance piece. And the more the relationship and the connection that we have, the better off you're going to be as far as the shiny object stuff. But I also want it to be one of those things where, depending on what you're trying to build, that you don't get sidetracked by somebody's gimmick, somebody's like, you know, the wholesaling stuff. Now, if the investment side is part of something you want it to be, then I always recommend that you work towards learning that part of the business so that you do understand it, so that you can talk knowledgeable about it. And then you start to add things over time, but you don't ever want to lose sight of what your initial focus is. Right, Russ? People get sidetracked all the time when they don't stay on track. So what are some of the things that you guys are doing to stay on track? Like, are you guys time blocking at all? Are you putting some time away for certain things? Yeah. What are you doing in your time blocking?
Just making sure to schedule out specific times to work on the business every day.
Got it. What are some of the things you work on a regular basis?
Working my sphere, really.
Okay.
That's the big thing.
Got it. What's one way you work your sphere?
Just keep in contact, especially with the ones that are showing any kind of interest. Got a few that have things they want to do, and just trying to keep them going until they're ready to pull the trigger with me.
Got it. One of the things that adds value to your sphere, sometimes we think that we have to go through and we're constantly posting about real estate, like sold or whatever. You know, you want to make sure that you're bringing that personal connection in with your business, because that's how people relate to you. If it's always the picture of a house that's sold or whatnot, there's no relationship building in that standpoint. So as you're doing that, like some of our emails and things that we've done, you know, we're throwing out renovation tips. We're throwing out different tips and tricks for people in order to stay relevant. We're talking about the iBuyer. We're talking about the zoo. Like, is this the best option for you? At least let us help you strategize or guide you through the process to make sure that it's being handled in the right way. Russ, what do you have some of your newer agents? What's some of the big things for them when they start?
The biggest thing is exactly what you're talking about, Steve, is understanding really your sphere of influence and what that is.
Mm-hmm.
And I always start saying, and just since you asked me, I would interrupt your class and let you ask me. By the way, if you guys don't know who Steve is, you're in a company. I don't know if greatness is the right word.
Thank you, Russ.
I don't want to flatter. I don't want Steve to think I'm browning him up a little. But Steve, truly, 20 years, guys, in the business, and Steve is in my top 3 favorite people in this business.
Thank you, Russ.
That great. So
I'll pay you later.
I thought I saw you handing the Benjamin before
Right.
the class.
I know you didn't even. This lunch came from the tile company, and that's like I even said that with the lunch you didn't buy. Steve usually buys me lunch. But guys, he is great. Take everything in, hit him hard questions. Steve is just one of the best we got in this business. With that said, guys, I always start with, if I can get my sphere of influence in a system, this is what I teach. If you can't explain what you're doing as a process, you don't know what you're doing. Right? So a process with your sphere, if I get them to 150, and as far as people, and build the relationships appropriately, I can get 2 deals a month out of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, we complicate this. Don't we? How do you make a call? We can go more into those things. And how do you connect with them truly? Start with a heart to serve and stop selling, start serving them.
Yep.
But have a process with your people, and look at how much you have. So many people in your sphere you just don't think you do, but you do. You really, really do. Anybody that sees you as an influence or sees you as a relationship, that they see you and know you and respect you enough. Now, if you don't like them, get rid of them. You don't want them in there anyway.
It's true.
Yeah,
But that's true. 150, 200 people that you have on a process, you're gonna have a business.
And we have so many ways, obviously, right now to keep in touch with those people, right? Between Facebook, Messenger, Instagram, right? So I'd encourage you guys just to think about what are the tools that you're currently using, and don't get sidetracked, right? And then at what point in time do you want to add another layer to your business? So I remember where I felt I screwed up is that sometimes we start getting enough leads to where we think that we need a buyer's agent, or we want to build a team, or something of that nature. Is anybody at that point here? No? Okay. It's the way I run my business is it's a completely different structure. So when I started getting to the point to where I wanted more help so I could do more stuff, I hired a customer service person. And then we hired the listing partner, Erica is my partner, hired her, and she does all the paperwork, and she takes everything from contract to close. So I don't have to be involved in that phase. But don't try to hire out your relationship building. Like that is going to be your key to every bit of your success, is being in touch with people. And part of that connection is using the social media stuff to keep digging for the gold, right? Because as you can provide more valuable information for stuff, I know like Stephanie Lou does a great class on Instagram.
Yeah.
I will tell you that I've had more business and more connections by being consistent in Instagram stories than I have, more so than anything else that I'm doing. And I have to be very intentional about it, because you don't want to get lost in it, but if you do it randomly, you don't end up staying connected to people. So people aren't interested in seeing what you're doing and where you're going. I posted a couple of pictures of a house that we just bought in Munns Park to sell on Instagram, and I got no less than 4 new buyer leads in Munns Park just from that one post of posting a couple of pictures. So don't always look at it from the standpoint of people love junky stuff, right? They love the ugly stuff. You can tell stories. You don't have to fake it till you make it, right? But there are things that you can be doing to add value or grab customer or attention awareness. So if go out and find a fix-up opportunity, walk through it, take pictures, talk about it. Talk about the things that you know. Those are things that engage people. Oh, you do these. Because we've been thinking about investing in real estate, or we've been thinking about buying a house, or how would we go about that? Right? There's all kinds of things that you can do inside your stories. And that's just one of the tools that you have. It's one of the tools I didn't have when I started, right? We did a lot of door knocking, a lot of calling, a lot of, God, when I started, since you guys have all been here less than 10 years,
You're a lot older than I am, Sam.
we used to take a stack. And by the way, Armless was an MS-DOS program at the time. And we'd take a stack of 20 homes and go out on Saturday to look at 20 homes, because there were no pictures when I started. There was nothing. We had black and white printouts, and even before that, the MLS came in a phone book. I know, because when I was 12, I used to take them out and throw them away, and every week we'd get a new phone book for houses, and you had to copy and paste, or you couldn't even copy and paste back then, copy machine, and so that's how much we've evolved, in 30 years to where we're at now, which makes it a lot easier to actually help people find a house, right? Because they already have the information they need.
Steve, I want to change where you're going, but my favorite post that you did is probably, you've heard this 1,000 times, but I don't know if you plan on sharing this, but the one post you did on Facebook with the homeless gentleman and one of the properties, what came out of that?
Which one? The one I almost killed, or?
Well, there was one I remember that, I don't remember anyone that you almost killed. I remember them all being pretty good stories, but one was particularly, how, the point I love with that is, instead of going in and kicking them out, you went in there and just said, guys, what's going on?
So
how do you handle that? That went so viral.
It did.
Not because you found homeless guys in one of your properties, but how you handled it.
Yeah, what
Russ, great social media marketing.
What Russ is referring to is 4 years ago,
Been that long already?
Yeah.
Wow.
Bought a house at Metro Center, and I decided I was going to do something different. I was going to go do a free estate sale. So when somebody came in, they could take whatever they wanted for free. It was my way of trashing the house out without costing me money.
Because it was a tenant lived there, and then they
The owner, just some of the houses that we buy, we just leave the stuff there and take what you want. So anyway, so when I came in, I had my firearm on me, and I started hearing things, and I started clicking on lights, and then I'm yelling, and I have 4 people coming out from different hallways, and so it was super scary. They were pretty docile, and so after I got done looking through the house, they had just broke in. It was cold and rainy. I went back out to the car and got the donuts and coffee and sat there on the door stoop with them.
That's right.
Find out like what was going on, and then I left them there for a week. So
They earned that though. They
yeah,
basically
I
said
told
they
them to
wouldn't
clean the
trash
house out for me. They could sell anything they wanted.
Nice.
It's insured. Yeah, it's insured. It's insured. Yeah, it's not my only homeless story. But let's talk about consumer shiny objects. So how do we as agents look at having solutions for anything? That's one of the things that I've gotten really good at with my business, is looking at properties and people's situations from a 30,000 foot level. Because if you're just going to meet somebody from the selling aspect, you're going to miss the connection piece, right? In this last month, and this is so you guys know, if somebody brings up an iBuyer, I have some of those same solutions. So if you ever have a client that's got, like Larry was just telling me, or John Dyer was just telling me, he's like, I got a house, it's got multiple additions on it, it wasn't permitted, this is going to be a problem. Tell me what to do with this, like what direction do we go? Not everything is putting on the market in the traditional sense, and there's other ways that we can help our clients depending on the property. So keep that in mind as you meet or talk to people. This is what I like the agents to know as far as when it comes down to working together. The more we work together, the better the solution we can provide for the client. And I can't tell you how many agents in the last month that drug me along on a listing appointment. What can we do here? Well, here's my number.
That's the only time I call you anymore.
This is what we can do. This is what we can do, and this is how we can accomplish it. And sometimes it's pretty crazy because there's things that the iBuyers can't do and won't do, right? What can't they do? Well, they're not going to lease it back. They're not going to give time. There's certain things they don't buy. There's certain things they don't want. Well, I'll take all of that. So we've got a couple agents right now where we bought their clients' homes, and the clients have a 3-month free rent while they're out looking for their new house. No stress of multiple closings, no inspections, no BS. It's just straight, flat forward, right? And it's one of the ways that we operate a little bit differently than the online companies. I had one agent last week that I went to high school with their kids. They did business with my parents. She called, she's like, do you do Maryville? Hey, if it makes money, it makes sense, right? So she took me down to Maryville, and
That's the one where you got shot? No, I'm kidding.
no, have not.
I'm kidding. I have a lot of nice friends in Maryville, I'm sorry.
And but this lady lived there for 30 years. It needs a roof, it needs an AC unit, and Beth is like, there's no way we're putting this on the market, right? Without having a frenzied investor thing and fielding a bunch of offers. And so, I simply gave her the net number that she wanted and gave her 30 days to move. And Beth makes a commission, we get a new house, and seller cried on the way out the door. But that's connecting, and if people know in your sphere, these are the things that we offer and can do, because you can, right? You have the solution, you have the iBuyer solution, you have me, you have George's operation. They do some of the same stuff, and I'm probably a little crazier than George is when it comes down to it. But
For sure.
but you have those solutions in your toolbox, and that's how we continue to dig for the gold, in our businesses is by having ways out, right? Having different options and different paths for our clients, but also keeping the same path. Like if you're newer to the business, it's probably not yet time to dig into the investment stuff. It's good to hear about it and to know about it and be prepared for it, but it's probably not the first thing you want to jump into, right? I think the wholesalers out there, I think they leave a lot of opportunity on the table with the sellers because they don't have a license. The wholesalers. Does everybody know what a wholesaler does? No? Okay. Does everybody know what wholesaling is? Okay. So wholesaling is basically getting a house under contract and selling the paper for a fee. The wholesalers also throw a lot of stuff against the wall and hope something sticks. They're also masters at prospecting, right? They go through a lot of
prospecting.
Right. They go through a lot of process in that. But where they leave the stuff on the table, that is one of the things that our license provides opportunity to find properties that are distressed, that are potentials. Not that you have to put it on the market, not that it has to go through it, but it's having the outlet for the client. Have any of you guys had a client that needed to have something crazy at the end happens? No?
What do you mean by crazy?
Yeah.
Well,
I had a clean deal, so.
Define crazy. Yeah.
Define crazy. I'll give you an example. One of my lenders, Kelly, she called. She says, "Hey, this house, sales price at $250. Appraisal came in 1,000 square feet short because of these 2 additions that were done on it that you access from the outside of the house rather than the inside. So the appraisers would not give them the value of those additions until they had doorways going through. Well, the investor in Texas that had been put on hold that owned it, actually it wasn't an investor, he was an owner, needed to get the money to close on another deal, right? So we have the domino. So Kelly called and she's like, "Hey, is there anything you can do?" Actually, the listing agent. And so I said, "Here's what we can do." I said, "I can buy it for this price, and the buyers can move in like they're supposed to on Friday. I'll close on it in 7 days, and they will buy it back to me from this price, and they'll rent it on the in-between, and my wife will come down and put the doors in so we can have the appraisal." So we were able to salvage all that. Everybody still got paid, and we solved the problem for the family. So it's having those tools and I'm telling you guys, that's where I come into play. When stuff gets crazy, that's when a text message, that's when I'm not sure what or how this is going to happen, but that's part of your toolbox is understanding like, hey, I got this situation, you see anything in this? And then we kind of work it backwards. And that's the important part to know that I'm always available, or Mike in my office at least, to get the ball rolling. So keep that in mind.
Every time I hear you talk though, Steve, I get that, reinforced message. There's almost always a solution for problems you think right away, how in the crap are we going to fix this?
There always is.
There's so many complicated problems that aren't that complicated to solve.
Well, it depends on what you know, right? You guys are all newer in the business, so you haven't seen half the stuff that I've seen and ways to solve it. The experience is what it's all about when you're going through this. But having people like the people in my home group, myself, the brokers, there's usually a way to look at it. And if everybody's reasonable in the solution, there's usually a way to put it together. Were you going to say something?
No, I was going to say that was one of the points I was going to make. Those, if everybody's reasonable, but you said it. That's right. That's got to be part of it. Because
yeah, it depends on the position that everybody's in as well, right? So it depends on if it's a desperate situation. It's a can we do this? Can't we do this? That's really the important part. Is knowing that you have other options for people. It's not just, they're not just dead leads. Find out why they're dead. right? Find out why they can't qualify. Is there a different way? Is there a different program? You know, it's constantly grinding to find that perfect solution for them. You guys have questions? Anything else you want me to touch on? Yeah.
I still need you to come up to that house in Desert Hill.
I text you.
Didn't I call you back?
No. I'm gonna put you in the car when we're done.
I actually believed you when you said it.
So let's talk about that. This is like live scenario, guys. Do you have anything that's like live scenario? Like, what would you do in this situation?
Yeah.
Let's do it right now. Okay, just think about something. Think about something you've experienced. What can I go through and look at it in a different way?
The question I have is that when you're a new realtor, I feel like people are in the wings waiting because of the experience. You know, because so I'm trying to project. Hey, not only do I have a great brokerage, I mean, and I feel like still people are kind of going, well, let's see what her next deal is going to be. Let's see how. You know that we don't want to be her guinea pig, you know, and so I feel like a lot of times, a lot of my posts are about housing and about the industry and about the news of it, and to project that I'm educated about it and I know what's going on. But that if somebody says to me, what's the hardest thing is to sell people on. You know, I still know, you know, because I feel like to be nothing against those Callaways at all, but I've had two people tell me,
I hate those.
and I've had two people tell me, and one of them being my own brother, okay, because you know they say about family and friends. My own brother, who used them, said every appointment that he went on, it was a different realtor.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I appreciated the feedback, you know, before I wanted to beat the crap out of him. But anyways, so the feedback was, so now I'm kind of turning my thing into saying, hey, I have a relationship with you, I get to know you, you're always going to see me, it's always going to be me. It's just working on that experience. And I know I lose a lot of people to, well, I know somebody who's been in it for 20 years, and I've been in the industry for 20 years. I just have now activated my license.
So, some of what you're saying is in here for you. Yeah. There's nobody that said, I won't do business with you because you don't have any experience, have they?
Your brother?
Right? Right? No, I mean, I asked why they chose somebody else, and a lot of it is because the other person has been there longer. Oh, they did my other house.
Mm-hmm. You're gonna get that. Like everybody, the stats are is that everybody knows 10 to 12 real estate agents.
Can't find the people that don't.
Especially in the city.
That's a given. But you have to overcome that. I don't have experience, and you do one of two things to overcome that. You either go join a team and get some experience and enjoy that internship part of it. You may like it, you may, like being on Lawton's, like their culture, the things that they've done, the things that you develop in that, and it develops your confidence in what you're doing. Because you have a bigger name behind you, and the bigger name gives you leverage. I used to do it with my parents, when I was 20 years old when I got my license. I had my parents who were like, oh, the kid, right? It was always
With no experience.
Right, with no experience.
We want your parents.
So you're sending me out with your son who drives a lowered Tahoe. Yes. I still had speakers in the back of it.
And you look the same, Steve.
The new home buyers that I have helped are just so grateful that I kept with them improving their credit.
Yeah.
I kept
Yeah.
on with them saying, we will find you something. And
Yep.
I kept on with them. So I also feel like it's just going to be a nurturing that they're going to tell other people. And
As long as you're asking. Right?
And I don't know, not to
Do it.
but I'm less than a year in, and my biggest thing was always like, why would this person want to work with me? There's a million agents out there. Like, I haven't even sold a home. Why would they want, And I had it in my head. I hadn't I closed one deal in my first 9 months, and I started working with Russ on the lawn team, and my whole mindset changed. Lawn team hasn't given me any homes to leads or anything like that, as far as like here's, you know, but my mindset's changed, and today I'll close my 3rd deal this year, and I should be writing my 4th deal in probably another 2 weeks, or less, probably a week. And for me, it was just like
You got a lot more good stuff coming this kid, yeah.
it was, for me, it was like
Now you're ready to come over to the Valentine.
Stay away from him, Steve.
hey, for me, it was like right now, I'm closing a deal today. It's the family's 5th home out here in the state. The wife has 2 of her best friends are agents. I met them at an open house and they decided to work with me. They didn't give me their name, they didn't give me their number, email, nothing. They took my business card and called me a week later. It was all about the relationship we had, and like, not that I walked around like I'm like this all-star agent, but it was just the confidence that I finally started to get in my head, and then just that personal relationship, like, and it just all of a sudden started to fall. And then I just got a text today, someone wants to give me their brother that wants to buy $1 million home. And it's just like, it's weird, but like the second I changed my mindset, I was drowning. My wife was at home with our newborn. It was freaking
conversation.
It was bad. And then it just like, it's just, you know, slowly but surely, it's like the mindset changed. And so that was my 2 cents.
Welcome to being
What's up, Nathan?
Yeah,
Be glad you didn't do your brother's.
yeah.
One of my first deals was my sister's house. I'll tell you right now, it was one of the worst experiences ever.
So you just get a family that all has real estate licenses and you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah,
That's how ours
it
is.
was just, why don't anybody want to buy? Why doesn't anybody want to buy my house? Okay, it backs to Joe Max, and people are concerned about the noise when the road expands. So it's a constant criticism of the house. Well, it didn't bother me. Okay, well, that doesn't mean it doesn't bother other people.
You can tell based on our industry this one thing that my dad always ingrained in me. It is better to be there than to be good. Because I've done a lot of business with people that aren't any good, but they were there. They were there when the person walked into the open house, they were at the coffee shop, they were at the kids' school, they were doing those things, and they were there.
Yeah, my wife and I talk all the time. It blows my mind because we're still struggling, type thing. But it blows my mind how many real estate agents don't call, don't respond to email, don't, like on the other side of a deal or whatever. It's insane how many unresponsive agents there are, and yet they're busy. I'm like, how right? You don't communicate to people, yet you're busy. I don't get it.
Yeah, that's
an interesting dynamic, yeah.
but yeah, that is something that, you know, the other piece is just the more professional we are with each other, you know, the bigger the difference makes as well. You know, that's why I don't talk to real estate agents anymore during cross transactions because of my impatience. That's what Erica does. But when I need to step in, I do. And congratulations
Yeah.
on the changes.
Yeah.
Russ, let's walk through that deal.
Before we get into that deal, your first name?
Susan.
Susan. I just want to encourage Susan first, actually.
You don't pray for her too?
I would. We're all going to lay hands on her. She's going to get 10 deals this week. No, Steve made a really good point. I want to make sure you heard it, because Dylan made the same point too, was be aware of the stories you're telling yourself, because the stories you're telling yourself here are playing out here, always.
Because what you're saying right now is I'm not good enough. I'm not as
Right.
good as the experience.
The
and it has nothing
marketplace
to do with that.
doesn't care. It really, your experience don't. The good news is it really isn't that. See, the best, what they need is help.
Then that's why I'm drawn to first-time homebuyers, because I feel like I can lead them along because they're kind of ignorant
Right.
about the system and
But this
how
is
it works.
exactly what you
and-
came here to hear today, so get rid of all that thinking.
Yeah.
I don't even want you to think about first-time home buyers. Here's what I want you to think about. Forget validation and just go for contribution. Forget validation, period. Get out of your head, Who cares? Go help somebody. Because all they care about is getting help. Find me, fill it, go help. The one who helps them is going to get it.
Yeah.
But that goes back
And
to
be there.
you have to be there
Help them.
to do it.
You have to be there. And none of that other stuff matters.
There's
And
so
you got to
many,
keep telling yourself that, and all of a sudden, it'll start playing out, and then you'll start believing it. Because it's true, but you don't get it until you're in it. I was the same way. No question. I think most of us are
Yeah.
when we start. And of course that
when
makes
I go
sense.
to networking thing, or I get myself out there and I start talking about, I surprise myself and I walk out of there like 2 hours later and everybody is just, everyone's like you said, everyone believes me. I mean, they're believing myself. I'm just not believing myself. And I walk out there, I get in the car and I'm like, wow, I knew what I was talking about. You know, I was like, I was talking about all kinds of stuff. And so yeah, the more I'm getting out there and talking about it, the more.
Forget validation. Am I doing this right? Doing this wrong? Just forget yourself. As backwards as that sounds. Forget yourself and just go help. You know what you're doing. You're competent. I can hear it right away. All right, Desert Hills, Steve.
let's talk about it.
So Desert Hills is a very interesting property, about at least an acre north of Carefree Highway.
Okay.
Nice lady. A while back lost her husband, and again, I'm just going to be open here. We're not mentioning names. We're
Right.
not even mention the
Right.
address.
Address,
I will
okay.
do that later.
Yeah.
I did go out and I met her, and we talked about where am I going to take her,
Right.
because she's got some equity in the house, but where am I going to take her that she can afford? I think we've got some mental illness challenges. Lost her husband. The house is, I don't think the mortgage on the house is $100,000. And it's a good property. I think it's worth in the fours probably. But this is where Steve's wheelhouse is, and this is what I love hanging out with Steve, because these scenarios get us better at coming up with solutions, and that breeds in all kinds of other great stuff, because you just get better. To Susan's point.
So Russ's deal, it's very similar to a lot of people. It's got equity in the house. This lady
I
going,
can't sell it on the open market. It's too
Right.
much crap that needs to be repaired. An
Right.
empty pool,
so
all this
again,
kind of
empty
stuff.
pool.
Paint's trash.
Right.
Interior's okay. It's just a distressed property with
Right.
equity.
So rather than going through it, it's buying it and giving her the time to find what she needs, which is something.
She has no money for repairs.
Right. So that's one of those things where we'll go through and try to provide the solution, and that's why Russ is calling me and saying, "Hey, this is where we need to be in
Yeah.
order to make this happen." And I'll either figure out how to do it myself, as far as the purchase, or I'll bring in another investor to do it. That's on the list, depending on what projects and things we have going on. Anybody else have any strange scenarios they want to go over?
What would be the first step in that, though, Steve, just to help go down that road a little
On yours?
further?
Well, first step is to see the property,
Just
right?
get out there and see.
So we look at it, we go through, like, this is what the cost of repairs would be,
Okay.
right?
So
we've
we
got,
come up with some kind of budget.
so we've got to back that out.
Okay. To make
Right.
it marketable on the resale side? Or
Right.
the full retail side?
Right, so if it was retail, this is how much she'd have to put into it, or how much I'm gonna have to put into it. So whenever I recommend to my sellers, if we put $1 in renovation, we need to get 2 back, or else it's not worth it, right? So let's just take an example. The pool is probably 10 grand to repair. You know, how big's the house?
Probably about 3,000 square feet.
So let's go down this. This is normally on the sheet, so
Acre lot.
whenever you're trying to, in retail space, would you say it needs a whole renovation? Like, does the whole house need to be renovated?
I see, when I think that, I think of the opportunity, maybe more than what it needs in this market. I'm not sure, I'd lean on your opinion for that more than mine, honestly. There is certainly some needs for some repair, but it doesn't feel like it's a dated disaster and cabinets have holes or anything like
Okay.
that.
So then whenever I go into something, a good rule of thumb is, you know, something's a disaster, like the house that I bought down in Maryville last week, you know, it needed $50 a square foot in renovation by the time you do roof and ACs, kitchens, like bathrooms, could be plumbing, like those are all the things I'm trying to plan for. In this case, based on what Russ is saying, I guess I'll determine that when I get there, I might use $25 a square foot, which means that house is gonna need a $75,000 renovation, plus the pool. So now we have to back into that and look at, hey, if the house was on the market in this condition, it would, you know, if we did the renovation, this is what it would sell for, approximately. And then you back out the sale costs, right? And in this price range type house, you're probably using a 7 to 8% cost of sale, backing out commissions, backing out repairs. Then you're backing down to where it's kind of like the iBuyer thing, right? There's gotta be a risk factor for me in it. So I have to buy with enough margin to have the risk factor of, if I'm gonna take this risk, it's gotta be worth it, and that's how we backed it all in. And that's where we come up with a price, and then if that price is agreeable, then what I will do is I will close on the house, give her money, and give Russ the time to go find her a property, you know, while it's a free. And a lot of times, the way people work it out is they'd rather have, you know, based on my price, they'll work out 2 to 3 months of free rent. So they're not making payments and all that other stuff. It's just worked right into the price. And then she can move. I get the house when she's done, it's insured, and then we're all moving on to bigger and better things when it's done. And it's really hard for some people. I've got clients right now that they've lived in this house for 35 years. They're completely embarrassed of the inside of it. They don't want to put money into it. And they wanted to buy their dream home. It's a new build. Well, the builder wants to see the contingency removed within 60 days. So we went through all the stuff. Here's what we can do. And we closed on the house in 30 days and left them there until the new build was done. We even had a cow fall in the pool.
A cow.
Called the cow house. We were sitting at the kitchen table.
I've been having a beer with Steve.
we were trying to think of a slogan. You know, we know a thing or two because we've seen a thing or two, like the farmer's insurance.
That was a bit. Did you guys put a video over that one?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I saw
Yeah. I was sitting at the kitchen table like this, and I mentioned to.
A good commercial for farmers.
I know, right?
We covered it.
Yep.
And lost though.
That's right.
So we're sitting there and I'm joking about, those are cows. He's like, no, he's like, I got this crazy Hungarian neighbor that, bought dairy cows first and butchered them thinking they were beef cows. And he's like, so now there's new ones back there. And so I'm like, the cow's on the other side of the fence now. I'm like, hope it doesn't fall in the pool. And we're joking about it, laughing. And next thing you know, the cow slipped on the cool deck and in the pool. And cows can't swim.
For sure.
So the cow was trying its hardest to get out on the love seat area, and it's starting to drown. And so finally the neighbor got a noose around it and started to pull it back around to the stairs. It was an hour of hysterics because we finally got the cow out of the pool and then trying to get the cow back into the pen, and he was pissed. And so this little Hungarian guy's got this noose around the cow, and the cow takes off running, and there he goes behind.
But you got the house.
Huh?
But you
I got the house. We call it cow house.
Call like you guys give it to him now. It's
Right. I'm like, just take the cows with you when you leave, please.
Wondering why that steak dinner tasted
Funny.
poor.
Right.
Right.
When I started following you on Instagram after your last class, I said, he's right, he does not make this stuff up.
They don't make anything up, yeah, for sure.
So I'll go through one more with you real quick. One that I just bought. This is always the problem for. Just use my hand, or I just use the other side of the board.
I'm gonna make a call to her, and I'll be right back.
Okay, so have any of you guys gotten calls from an investor or a seller that's like, my house is trash, I don't want to do the repairs, what do we do with it? Anybody had that call yet? Okay. Huh? I wish. So we've got one right now that investor called, and I do have an advantage on this because we own the property management company, right? He's owned the house since 80 something. It's over at 36th Avenue in Dunlap, and he called, and we just had a bad eviction on it. It's pretty gross. And I said, what are you thinking you want for it? He's like 160, 170. I'm like, Ken, that's retail. Like, we gotta back into this because it's gonna need 40 grand worth of repairs. It's probably worth 225. do you want to put the money into it? Yes or no? He's like, I really don't. He's like, I just want to be done with it. It served its purpose. Let's move on. And so, you know, he told me 160, and I came back and offered him 145, and we settled at 148, right? So here's what that one looks like for my risk. I think the house might be worth 210-ish, 225 maybe if I get lucky. Again, luck does play a factor in this stuff. And I'm into it for 148. So have you guys heard the 70% of ARV after repair value, right? So if I'm looking at, I'm going to take an average, let's say 215. 70% is 150. So I bought it right on the money. And now here's the factor that we go through is whether or not the risk is worth the reward, right? So we've had people breaking into it. It's got nasty cats there, and my wife said she can probably do it for 20 in this particular one. It's pretty small kitchen, small baths, tile flooring's in good shape. My only concern now is looking at the roof. So when we do these, we always look at our risk factor first before maybe taking it out to another investor and selling it to them. So in this case, if we have 20 into it, factoring about 10K in holding costs. Okay, so 168, I'm into it for 178 approximately, plus some other random stuff. Now over here, this is always the hard part, right?
What does the holding cost entail?
Hard money interest, utilities, insurance, taxes. Those are all the costs. If I go back to the 215 number, my fingers would work. I'm factoring a 10% cost of sale because I can guarantee you there's going to be a buyer asking for concessions on this. It's just going to happen. It's 21K on the backside.
And you anticipate holding what, for 2 months, 3?
In this price range, because FHA, your minimum 90 days. We could probably get it done in 30.
Yeah.
But then most likely it's going to be an FHA buyer in this price range and neighborhood. I might get lucky, and we've had some luck with it.
And it's vacant as you're buying it? At the time you close on it, it's vacant?
Yeah, it's vacant. They were actually trashing it out today. We closed on it today. So the lucky profit is right here. If all goes well, that's my risk for taking it on. So some people in this business feel like they almost feel guilty. Am I doing the wrong thing, right? But we had the conversation of what it could be worth if you put this money into it and go through the risk, but he didn't want to go through the risk. He'd rather sell the risk to me in that aspect. So, again, flipping houses, that's a shiny object. It's a good thing to be in. I think the investment side, it's more of the being prepared to understand the numbers so that when you do come into somebody and the house is trashed, you can run a quick, what would it look like, right? The retail is this, 70%, I could buy it about here. Remember, he wasn't asking me for opinion. He was asking me to, hey, do you want to buy this? So he wasn't coming to me as his real estate agent, he was coming to me as the investor saying, what can we do, what's it going to cost, and what can I get rid of it for? So that's just another solution in your tool bag at the end of the day. Well, that's all my time. You guys got any questions before?
And that deal wasn't something that Open Door would touch?
Nope. They wouldn't touch it because of the age.
Too much work.
Because of the age, too much work, location. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff. The cow house, they wouldn't touch it. The house in Desert Hills, they won't touch that. There's a lot of stuff they won't.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
where are you gonna put that 20 grand exactly?
So it needs, the good news about that house is the tile flooring for the area was actually pretty good. It's a 14-inch tile, 15-inch tile. That 20 grand will go into, 1,200 goes into trash out to get all the junk out of there. And then you've got drywall, kitchen cabinets. The kitchen's super small, so we won't have a lot in there. And then one bathroom has to be redone. So a lot of times in a house like that, one of the major expenses is flooring, so we don't have that expense on that one. And then it's got some exterior repairs, and we have probably put, because the house is so small and it's a block, we can put 6 new windows in it for a couple of grand, which makes a difference to the buyers in that price range when you're doing it. So that's roughly where it would go. And here's the other thing too, the risk on this one, which we don't even know yet, is having the sewer camera, having the roof looked at. Like there's still some more stuff there that we're not sure of yet. But I knew that if I bought it for $148, depending on how that stuff comes out, I knew that potentially I might be able to sell it to another investor that's looking for buy and hold or something, maybe for $158, and just be as is out. So there's a couple of different ways to do that. Questions, comments,
So, yeah, I
tomatoes?
still have another question about that. So you're closing on it today,
Yep.
cash on it out today.
Yep.
But you don't know the condition of the waste lines.
Mm-hmm.
And I assume you have kind of an idea what the AC,
Yeah, the AC is probably about 10 years old.
so that's still workable.
Yep.
But you didn't have like a contingency in there based on scoping the lines? Because, so I just did a house, and all of a sudden there's a $7,500 waste line repair because the frickin' Orangeburg
Yep.
collapsed.
Yep.
So if I didn't actually prepare for that, then the house would have I would have been upside down, or breaking.
Been there, done that.
Yes.
It's the risk reward, and I don't ever recommend, like, if you guys get started, you know, and you're buying your first one like that, you can't risk what I do, right? You want to find some contingencies in there, and let's face it, doing the inspections, you know, is one of the things that people either like or don't like, right? That's one of the things that is appealing when I go through and compete with Zillow, OfferPad, or Open Door. They're still all doing inspections. They're still doing all the stuff that a traditional sale has to go through. I don't do that. I'm in and out in 7 days. Like that's how fast this one will close. And I'm just taking on the risk, right? And it's a law of average.
That's how you make up for it in volume.
Right. Right. If it's, you know, when we were first doing them, you know, we were doing some inspections and things like that, depending on how good of a deal we got. But again, if you get a good enough deal,
Yeah, sure, yeah, that's it, right?
you're risking. Like, what's the worst case scenario with this one? Well, if I decide to flip it, I know I've got $15,000 profit, and I actually have a little bit more than there, because you got to remember that I pay myself a commission on the deal. So there's still a little bit more in volume there. Maybe I get 225 out of it. Maybe I get 210 out of it. And maybe I have to put a sewer line in. But I do know, like, because we remodeled the same house 2 streets over, I do know how much that sewer line is because we replaced that one.
How much is it?
It was about $3,500.
Oh.
So if you wound up with the sewer line on this one, and it was a chunk, whatever, is gonna cut into you too much, you could also hold it, yes?
Yeah, you could. Absolutely.
And
Like,
kind of absorb the,
yeah, you could actually, you know, it's some of the stuff, Nathan took our flip class, and some of the stuff that we talked about the other day is exit strategy when you get into something like this, right? Rather than losing money on it, let's say an appraisal came in low or something, then I just keep it as a rental, right? Rather than losing money right now. So that's always an option as far as exit strategy.
Thanks, Dave.
See you, bud. You got to remember too, every time we sell one of these things, you're paying out 10%, right, of the profits, unless you can figure out how to sell it yourself. That's always the hard part, because you're giving up that equity to sell it versus keeping it. That's why I always try to get people to stay away from flipping and hold more than the flips, because the flips are risky. Nobody wants to lose as much money as I have on flips. You know, like I said, it's a law of average, but that's just what I believe in it, and I don't believe everybody should get into it, because it's not fun all the time.
And it's hellacious if it's your first deal and you lose.
Yeah.
And you can afford it 2 or 3, 5 down the line, but the
Right.
first one you could be selling.
Right, but then you get kind of tired of, well, I did really good on this one, and then this one didn't do so good, and so my law of average is 0 for all that work, right? So, well, guys, I appreciate you. Actually, I don't know why this slideshow got screwed up somewhere.
Steve, did you email me that?
No, not yet. I couldn't